Which of these course openings would make you pay closer attention? By the end of this module, you'll understand how to recognize a phishing email. Or, you've just received an urgent message from your company's CFO asking you to open a payroll file before 3 o'clock. What do you do? The second opening gives you a person, a problem, and a decision. So now you want to know what happens next. That's the power of storytelling in e-learning. It doesn't replace the learning. It gives the learning somewhere to stick. In this video, you'll learn how to turn even dry topics like compliance and data privacy into situations learners want to follow, plus 3 simple ways to use storytelling without turning your course into a full-blown movie. When I taught 8th grade math, I used a picture book called One Grain of Rice to explain exponential growth. In the story, a girl asks for 1 grain of rice, with the amount doubling each day. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, and before long, those tiny amounts become enormous piles. The students weren't just hearing a definition or looking at a formula. They were watching the pattern unfold through a character, a choice, and a growing consequence. The math hadn't changed. The story simply gave it somewhere to happen. That's what storytelling can do in e-learning. It places an abstract policy, process, or idea inside a situation learners can follow, so they can see how one action leads to another. A lot of traditional e-learning presents information as separate pieces. Here's the rule, here's the procedure, here are the 5 things you need to remember. The information may be accurate, but the learner is still left wondering how it all fits together. A story connects those pieces. It gives someone a goal, puts a problem in the way, and shows how a choice leads to a consequence. Now, the learner can see why the information matters. A procedure is no longer just a list to memorize. It becomes a path that helps someone solve a believable problem. Stories aren't a magic trick, and they won't automatically make every course more effective. But when learners need to understand how one decision leads to another, a simple, believable situation can give that information structure. It might be an employee facing a difficult choice, or a technician trying to figure out what went wrong. The story doesn't need to be dramatic. It just needs to feel real. Stories also give the learner's attention a job to do. Instead of simply receiving information, they're wondering, what will this person do? What could go wrong? What would I choose? That kind of mental involvement is sometimes called narrative transportation, the feeling of becoming absorbed in what is happening. In one study, nursing students watched the film Wit and completed knowledge assessments. The students who felt more absorbed in the story tended to show greater learning gains. In other words, attention improves when learners are following a situation, anticipating what might happen, and connecting actions with consequences. This becomes especially useful with topics learners might normally tune out. Take the phishing course. Instead of beginning with definitions and warning signs, start with the urgent email from the CFO and ask the learner what they would do. Do they open the attachment, verify the request another way, or report it? Each choice leads to a realistic consequence, followed by the security principle behind it. The course may contain the same information. It is simply changed the order: situation, decision, consequence, explanation. That order matters because the learner becomes curious before the rule appears. The policy no longer feels like a random list of instructions. It becomes the information they need to solve the problem. And the same approach can work with data privacy, workplace safety, customer service, or almost any topic. So, how do you add storytelling without making the course more complicated? First, start with a problem, not an objective. Instead of opening with, "By the end of this module, you will understand the customer escalation process," try this. A customer is called 3 times, received 3 different answers, and is now asking for your supervisor. What do you do first? Now, the learner has a reason to pay attention. Someone has a problem, the The situation could get worse and a decision needs to be made. You do not need a detailed backstory. One person, one problem, and one meaningful consequence are usually enough. So before you write the objective, ask, what situation would make this information necessary? The second way is to let the learner make a decision. A story becomes more engaging when learners are not just watching someone else move through it. Pause the situation and ask, what would you do? What is the biggest risk? What should happen next? What information is missing? A multiple choice question, prediction, or short reflection prompt may be all you need. Once learners commit to an answer, they have a reason to keep paying attention. They want to see what happens next and whether they made the right choice. So find one point in your course where the learner can make a meaningful decision before you reveal the answer. The third way is to reveal information when it becomes useful. Many courses explain every rule first, then show learners a scenario afterward. That forces them to remember information before they understand why it matters. Instead, reverse the order. Present the situation, ask for a decision, show the consequence. Then explain the principle. Now the explanation answers a question the learner is already asking. In the phishing example, you do not need to begin with a long list of warning signs. Let the suspicious email create the need for those warning signs first. Then look at the first major explanation in your course and ask, could the learner encounter the problem before I explain the situation? One important caution: more story does not always mean better learning. If a detail does not help the learner understand the problem, make a decision, or recognize a consequence, it probably does not belong. A useful test is to ask, does this detail help the learner know what matters here? If the answer is no, cut it. Keep the structure simple. Give learners a believable problem, let them make a decision, show the consequence, and teach the principle when it becomes useful. Don't just give learners information to remember. Give them a situation they have to think through. But understanding the lesson is only half the challenge. Learners also need to remember and use it later. Watch my next video where I'll show you a practical way to help learners remember what they learned and apply it when it matters.